The salt spray and smoke mix stinging their eyes. Heavy boots slam against the chapter house door. For the Christian nuns inside the Coldingham Priory, the Vikings have arrived. What happened next, around 870 AD, was darker than the usual terror of the longships. The abbess grips a small, cold iron shear, a tool for sewing, not fighting. The raiders do not just want gold from the altar or food from the pantry, they want the women. But the Norse strategy isn't just random violence, it is a systematic unraveling of their identity. The chronicles of this attack, however, hint at a second, stranger terror, one that came from within the walls. Why did these women fear something more than the invaders? And what terrible secret was sealed inside that room? Why would survival require such ruin? If you enjoy these dark histories, leave a like and subscribe and comment below where you're listening from. And now, back to the story. The sound of splintering wood fades. Silence rushes in, heavy and cold. The Vikings are inside. The raid itself was brief, brutal, and decisive. Now, the occupation begins. The remaining nuns, those not cut down in the first chaotic minutes, are forced from their cells and the scriptorium into the main hall. The stone floor is gritty with ash and something else, something wet. The air smells of pine resin from the raiders' torches and the metallic tang of fresh fear. This is not a negotiation, it is processing. The Norsemen move with a grim economy. They do not speak, they point. One raider, holding a piece of charcoal from the ruined hearth, marks a crude line on the sleeve of each nun, a rough X. They are counted like cattle, shoved into lines, their names, their station, their vows, all erased by that single rough mark. They are inventory. They no longer belong to God. They belong to the axe. Abbess Æbbe stands among them. Her face is a mask of stone. In the folds of her woolen habit, her hand is clenched tight around the small iron shear from the sewing room. It is a simple tool meant for cutting thread, for mending vestments. Now, it feels like an anchor in a freezing sea. Its sharp points dig into her palm. She focuses on the bite of the metal. A younger nun, barely 16, begins to tremble violently. An older sister, her face already bruised, moves slightly to shield the girl, whispering a single word from the rule of Saint Benedict. Obsculta. Listen. It is not a call to fight. It is a call to discipline, a reminder of who they are, even as the marks on their arms claim they are only what they are. But how can discipline defend against chains? A leader, armored in leather and chain, gestures to a captive. A frightened monk, dragged from a hiding place, is forced to translate. His voice cracks. The message is simple. A mercy is offered. The Norseman, the monk stammers, admire strength. They are not here to just burn the priory, they are here for profit. The women will be taken. They will be useful. Those who are sensible will be fed on the journey. They will fetch a good price in the slave markets of Dublin or Jorvik. They will live in a new life, serving new masters. The price is simple. Do not fight. Do not resist. Be quiet property. Compliance offered one fate. Defiance offered another. The abbess looks at the translator, then at the Viking leader. She understands the mercy. It is the mercy of the butcher for the lamb, a clean journey to the block. She sees the longships waiting on the shore, sees the cold iron chains, smells the damp rot of the hulls. She sees the end of their world. The iron shear in her hand is no longer just a tool, it is an idea, a terrible, sharp idea. The priory was built to keep the world out, a fortress of faith. Now, its cold walls were a cage. The translator waits for an answer. The Viking taps his axe handle impatiently, the sound echoing in the sudden quiet. The choice was not between life and death. It was between two different endings, two forms of annihilation. What price would they pay to remain who they were? The translator finishes. The Viking leader steps forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. The message is clear. The time for consideration is over. Comply, the monk whispers, his eyes pleading. Submit to the new masters, and you will be fed. You will live. Defy them, and the hall becomes your tomb. The choice is laid bare. a life of brutal servitude, or a quick death on the stones of their own church. Abbess Æbbe steps past the translator, facing the armored leader directly. She does not look at him. She looks through him. Her hand, hidden in her sleeve, grips the Iron Shear until her knuckles are white. She speaks one line, not to the raider, but to her sisters. Her voice is not loud, but it cuts through the smoky air. We will not be. The Viking does not need the translation. The refusal is plain. He barks a laugh. It is not amusement, it is contempt. He gestures to his men. Leave them. The raiders pull back, taking the torches. The heavy oak doors of the hall are slammed shut. A heavy bar drops into place on the outside. The first escalation is not violence, it is silence, and cold. The only light is a pale gray wash from the high, clear story windows. The remaining nuns huddle together on the floor. Hours pass. The chill of the stone floor seeps into their bones. Thirst begins, a dry scratch in the throat. Fear, once a sharp spike, settles into a dull, heavy dread. But the Vikings misunderstood their enemy. They believed deprivation would break the women. They did not understand the rule. These women were already masters of deprivation. Their entire lives were a structured drill in ignoring the body, the fasts, the coarse wool habits, the midnight vigils in unheated chapels. What the raiders intended as torture was to the nuns simply Tuesday. Their discipline, meant to armor them against spiritual temptation, now became a physical shield. The abbess rises. She does not speak of hope. She speaks of order. She bids them kneel, and in the freezing dark, they begin to chant. The low, resonant drone of the Kyrie eleison. It is not a plea for rescue. It is an act of defiance. It is a declaration that this space, though captured, is still theirs. When the Vikings unbar the door the next morning, they are not met with cries for mercy. They are met with the unified, cold chant of the Litany of Saints. The leader's patience breaks. This is an insult. He orders the windows shuttered from the outside. The gray light vanishes. The world is reduced to absolute black. The door slams. The bar falls. The silence is now total. But what new resolve could form in such a void? It is in this complete sensory deprivation that the true why is revealed. Abbess Æbbe speaks into the blackness. Her voice is calm. She reminds them of the mercy offered, a new life, in Dublin, in Jorvik. She speaks the word the Vikings never used, slaves. She describes the iron collars, the auction blocks, the fate of women sold as property, forced to bear children for pagan masters. This was the fear greater than the raiders' axes, not death, but the systematic annihilation of their identity, the violation of their most sacred vow. This was the spiritual ruin they dreaded more than the sword. This was why they were sealed in the room. This was the price. The abbess moves, her hands finding her sisters in the dark. She finds the youngest nun and stops. "They want us for our bodies," she whispers. "They want us to be useful. We must become useless." A sharp metallic snick cuts the dark, the sound of the Iron Shear opening. The abbess did not wait for an answer. The chroniclers wrote that she preached a sermon, but the truth was likely colder. It was an act, a sharp intake of breath, a muffled sound of pain. Not a scream, but a gasp. She had done it to herself first. She had cut her own face. In the dark, a hand reaches out trembling and finds the abbess's arm. "Me?" a voice whispers. "Now me." The Iron Shear, the simple tool of mending, became the instrument of their terrible hidden choice. One by one, they destroyed the very thing the raiders had come to steal. They had chosen their own ending. The heavy bar scrapes back. The door groans open. Sunlight, sharp and aggressive, floods the hall. It illuminates what the darkness had conceived. The Vikings stand silhouetted, expecting to find women broken by thirst and fear, begging for the mercy of the slave ship. Instead, they find a gallery of horrors. The nuns are kneeling. They are chanting, but their voices are thick and muffled. Their white wimples are stained crimson. Their faces are ruined. The Abbess Æbbe stands before them, her own features a mask of fresh, terrible wounds. In her hand, she holds the small Iron Shear, its metal dark and wet. This is the hidden truth of Coldingham. This was their rebirth. They were not victims in the way the raiders understood. They had seized control of the one thing they had left, their own flesh. They had made themselves useless. They had destroyed the raiders' prophet. The Viking leader stares. His mind, wired for plunder and payment, cannot process this. This is not defiance. This is a profound spiritual insult. He has been robbed. He roars, a sound of pure frustration. He wanted property. They gave him martyrs. Abbess Æbbe meets his gaze. She does not flinch. She opens her hand. The Iron Shear, the instrument of their terrible freedom, drops from her bloody fingers. It clatters onto the stone floor, a small, sharp sound that echoes the finality of their choice. Around her, the other nuns perform a wordless rite. They do not cry out. They touch their own faces, their fingers tracing the wounds. A grim communion. They have taken their final vows. How could such a story possibly survive? It almost didn't. The official histories written by later, more civilized chroniclers softened the event. They preferred the image of pious women praying as the swords fell. But the act itself, the self-mutilation, was too visceral, too savage for their delicate records. Yet, a thread remains. A monastic chronicle, possibly drawing from earlier, lost accounts like that of Matthew Paris, speaks cautiously of Abbess Æbbe's terrible devotion. It hints at an act so extreme that it forced the raider's hand, an act that sanctified the ground. This is what was hidden. The martyrdom was not a passive slaughter. It was a calculated, agonizing choice. The nuns were not simply killed by the Vikings. They were executed for it. The raiders, denied their slaves and enraged by the defiance, did not just put them to the sword. That was too clean. They barred the doors again, this time for good. They brought torches, not to light the hall, but to burn it. Excavations centuries later at the priory site would reveal a thick, blackened layer, a stratum of vitrified stone and charcoal, evidence of a fire far more intense than a simple raid. A fire meant to erase. The shears, the stone, the women, all consumed. But what is left when the stone turns to dust? The priory of Coldingham was rebuilt years later by others. But the records of Abbess Æbbe and her sisters are gone. In the great chronicles of the borderlands, their names are absent. Where their tenure should be, there is only a gap, a blank entry, as if the ink itself refused to mark that terrible year. The fire ate the vellum, the wood, and the stone. It ate the names. It was a thorough erasure, an act of bureaucratic violence that finished what the raiders started. The story did not survive as history. It survived as a whisper. It became a local legend, a ghost story told by fishermen wary of the fog over the cliffs, a rumor that traveled from Coldingham to other houses, carried by frightened monks who had seen the ruins. They spoke of the smoke, a column of oily blackness that hung over the coast for days. They spoke of the silence that followed, a silence heavier than the sea fog itself. Later, chroniclers, writing in safe, quiet scriptoriums far from the coast, heard the tale. They smoothed its savage edges. They wrote of pious martyrs who died praying, not fighting back with the only tools they had. They erased the iron and the blood, replacing it with passive, acceptable piety. The truth was too dark, too sharp for their official histories. The salt spray and smoke are long gone. The stone hall is just a foundation, cold under the grass. But the echo remains. The act was meant to be an ending, a final, defiant no. But it became a story. The small, cold iron shear, a tool for